Hi, my name is Abisoye. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new, you are welcome. I have been off for a week because the last couple of weeks have been extremely intense. I've gone through loads of emotions, from just wanting to be, just frustrated, to be honest, to being uplifted as well, especially as a black woman. I did not think that some of the things that I've been quiet about would have been unearthed, and so many people are dealing with the same things. Racism is felt everywhere, so just to see so many protests happening across the world, people just joining together, honestly, it does lift my spirits. I know some people are saying we shouldn't be grateful because this is how it should be, but I'm very grateful that that races are coming together as one. We just need to keep pushing and holding people accountable, and that's what I want to say on this. I pushed back on doing this topic last week because I just thought that it wasn't the right time, but it is a topic about the experience of black people within the 1950s and 1960s within the UK. So that would be, if you're your late 20s or early 30s, that would be your parents' generation. If you are new to this channel, I like to create content that makes you think afterwards, I didn't know that I needed to know that. And it's reflective, something that you can share with other people or spur up conversations. So I hope you enjoy this video, and let's get into it. So today I'm going to talk about transracial private foster care within the 1950s and 1960s in the UK. In a lot of African cultures, it actually is quite normal to leave a young child with a family member while you are, as a parent, studying or working. And it appears that in the 1950s and 60s, thousands of West African, specifically Nigerian children were put in white private foster care by their parents. I have come across several stories about these children, specifically the experiences they had, but it did spark a question in me about what really pushed, or what could make a parent feel that that was their last resort to leave their child with somebody else, a stranger, in a foreign land. So in this video, I'm going to unpack some of the reasons why parents made that decision to leave their children in private foster care, how it affected our parents' generation, and how those decisions have impacted how we look at external involvement in parenting today. Between the 1950s and 60s, there were a number of countries that were on the verge of independence. In fact, if we're looking specifically at Ghana and Nigeria, for example, Ghana got their independence in 1957 and Nigeria got their independence in 1960. This newly independent country needed a skilled workforce. This prompted a lot of West Africans to travel overseas to seek further education. According to research conducted by Louise Owusu-Kwarteng, a senior lecturer at the Greenwich University, looking into the West African experience in the UK higher education system, she stated that many of these countries needed skilled people to take on the senior roles which were needed to develop these countries. It would also give these people a better chance to get higher paid roles back home. There appeared to be a preference for Western qualifications, as they're presumed to have more skills and ability. By the 1960s, it was reported that there were over 11,000 African students within the UK. So initially, it was the men that went abroad first, leaving their families back home. But by 1955, the Colonial Office insinuated a policy regarding married students. This stated that if they were planning to stay in the UK for more than 9 months, they were encouraged to bring their families with them. This decision was brought about after research that showed that a lot of men struggled to go back to their former life after their outlook had been altered during studying abroad. To be honest, I can identify with that, because even after going to uni for 3 years, when I came back home, it literally took probably a year for me to get back to my original routine and environment, so I can understand that. Specifically looking at Nigeria, the political climate and the Biafra War in the 1960s was another reason why families were encouraged to reunite abroad. In fact, one source told me that his parents actually initially decided to leave two of his siblings in Nigeria and go to the UK, where they actually had him and another sibling, but later one of his older siblings in Nigeria died due to neglect, and the other one, in his words, escaped bullets due to the political climate. And this actually forced his parents to bring his older sibling to the UK to protect him so he could be safe. Okay, so we have a lot of families that are now reunited in the UK. So what next? Well, upon reaching the UK, a lot of these families were faced with a multitude of issues, and this affected them reaching their goals. And one of the biggest issues was financial. Although these students received educational bursaries, a lot of this went towards UK living costs, which forced a lot of students to work alongside studying. Many case studies told me that their parents were studying during the day and working during the night, so there was nobody to look after them. And the studying was intensive because they only planned to stay there for a short period of time. So who could look after the children? In comes private foster care. A private foster care arrangement is one that is made without the involvement of local authority for the care of a child under the age of 16 years or under 18 if disabled, by someone other than a parent or close relative in their own home, with the intention that it should last for 28 days or more. This inability to look after their children led a lot of students to put their both African-born and British-born children into transracial private foster care agreements. And for many, it was more than 28 days. In fact, for a lot of people, it was for years. This was due to the nature of the reason why their parents were there in the first place, to study. Placements were mostly made by word of mouth or through adverts that said homes wanted. The Times estimated that in 1968, there were approximately 5,000 African children in private foster care annually in the UK. And although a lot of these students were based in London, their children were based outside of London due to the capital's housing shortage. So they were based in places like Essex, Sussex, Surrey, Kent. Early press reports in Britain actually depicted this type of transracial foster care in a positive light. In some accounts, they saw the charitable nature of the foster care parents taking on these children and the unselfish choice of the African mother giving their children away for somebody to look after them because they knew they weren't able to do so to the best of their ability. But by the mid-1960s, transracial private foster care was actually seen as quite powerfully negative within the British press, with some deeming the agreement as a babies for hire scheme. Also, a new sense of panic was emerging when it came down to the welfare of the children. By 1963, the Kent County Council had spent over $15,000 a year dealing with problems of African children in private foster care homes. $15,000 in 2020 does not seem like a lot of money compared to, you know, the funds that are put in place for welfare. But I did use an inflation calculator, which actually said that £15,000 in 1960 would equate to £289,000 in 2020. And that would be the amount of money used to sort out problems arising from private foster care for one county. In hindsight, it can be very easy for us to be critical of the parents' decision to put their children in private foster care, especially with so many different reports that you hear of negative experiences that people faced. But I think it's important to put ourselves in their shoes and understand what potential things they could have been thinking at the time that would make them feel that they had to make that decision. To do this, I did speak to people who had been put in the private foster care system or setup during the 1950s and 1960s. And here are some of their responses to conversations they've had with their parents and assumptions they've made as to why their parents did so. So the first one, yes, a lot of people did say it was for selfish reasons. Some people said, why couldn't their mother have stayed at home with them? But then it does beg the question about gender roles at the time, like could the father have done it? A lot of people, you know, they both were there to study, so there is a question about that. I read a report about a woman a decade ago, a woman that lived in Peckham that had 4 children, who had a young child who she'd moved the child to live with a white family in a deprived, and equally at the time deprived area, and she was pregnant with the 5th child and was planning to leave the 5th child with that family as well. And it does make you think that this is quite a selfish decision. Like, why would you feel that, you know, this is like an arrangement that is okay? In terms of duration though, a lot of parents saw it as a short-term sacrifice for long-term gain, a better job back home so they could look after their children and give them more opportunities back home. They would only be in the UK for a short period of time, you know, for the duration of their studies. So in their mind, it was a couple of years and then we'll be reunited again. From a lot of people, they said their parents would call the agreement or the foster parents nannies. It wasn't like they were giving somebody their child to, you know, look after permanently. It was like this person was supporting their parenting. Earlier on, I said that culturally it is quite normal for African parents to leave their children with like a family member. I've heard of situations of families being in one household, each room there's loads of kids in one household, and it was like your child is the family's child. So in a sense, it was quite normal. Some of these students, when they did come to the UK, they did come with their friends, but their friends are in the same situation as them. They are working, they're studying. So there was not really a true family unit there that they could leave their children with. There was also a cultural expectation that white people would be able to look after their children quite well. One person mentioned their parents' idea of their foster parents tucking their children in at night, and that the experience would be quite positive for their child. Their child could potentially gain some social or educational benefits as well from living with these foster parents. One case study said that their mother looked at white people to be the standard. Well, there are various publications that talk about some of the things that these children faced, and I'm going to summarize some of them now. One of the things was confusion when it came to race identity. Some of these children were left at their private foster care homes from birth and were collected years afterwards. One of the case studies that I spoke to, they explained they were ripped from their foster parents' arms, and the way they explained the story, it was as if those foster parents were their biological parents. Like, they did not want to go with their biological parents back home, back to Nigeria. They were born in the UK as well, so Nigeria was, in a sense, their foreign land. On many occasions, these children have said that they felt unsettled, and they found it very hard to adjust back to living with their parents and siblings as well. Some of the siblings were actually separated in different foster care homes, so they found it really hard adjusting, and some just never did. In general, you know, you only mostly hear the bad things that people have experienced rather than the good things, so you know, we need to bear that in mind. It varies, but most studies say that the important years of a child's development are from the ages of 0 to 6 years, and for a lot of these children, those years were spent with foster parents. The moving around at such a young age, you know, a lot of people think that their children, they won't know, but it generally does affect a child. And it also makes me wonder how this constant moving, this unsettled feeling has affected these adults now in their late 50s or 60s when it comes to just them navigating the world, parenting as well. You can get somebody who, you know, has matched what their parents did and placed their children in random places when they were younger and didn't think anything of it. And you can get the other side where the parent is very protective of their child. If you look at Britain today and look at Britain then, there are a lot more families, African families specifically, settled in the UK. So if a parent had to make that decision now, they would have more of a network around them to support them. But having said that, sometimes family isn't the best choice. For example, in the unfortunate death of Victoria Kalimbi, who was murdered by her great aunt and her great aunt's boyfriend. The inquiry into that murder actually led to adjustments being made in the 2004 Children's Act, which actually put more emphasis on a range of agencies, specifically the local council, the police, the local authority, to be more involved when it comes to the welfare of children. Sometimes it does take these unfortunate situations to push for a change, as we've seen recently. I think in many ways the experiences that the children, now adults, faced shows that there needs to be more awareness when it comes to the welfare of children and the psychological issues that can be faced due to the things that they go through at a young age, especially in the African community. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was quite long, but I just came across it. I was having a conversation with somebody, and I just was really intrigued and wanted to look into it. I wanted to share what I learned with you all. So thank you for staying till the end. If you enjoyed this video, if you have any other suggestions that you want me to talk about, please feel free to comment below, or you can send me an email at connect@abisoye.co.uk and I will respond there. Keep the conversation going, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.